Yeah.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Kaleidoscope, the podcast all about change and transformation. My guest today is Gillian Galway, um, who confuses everybody by her name on Facebook, which is really quite funny. So if I start speaking Italian and singing weird songs, that's where it's from. A Giuliano. Um, Gillian is a dietitian and a mindset coach. Gillian, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you very much. It's
Thank you
lovely to
very
be
much.
here.
Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. You know the four questions. What was life like before the change? What was life like during the change? What was life like after the change? And what does the future hold? So I'm going to pass it over to you. I maybe take some notes and come back and ask you some questions at the end.
Perfect. Yes. So my transformation really is around behaviors and habits and mindset, which is interesting because that's what I help clients with. But it's one of those ones where some of that stuff has been over a lifetime and other bits have been more recent. So the behaviors and habits are very much my relationship with food and eating and body image. And that's been a lifetime thing that's really got me into what I do now. And the mindset and emotional awareness piece has been more recent. So, in terms of habits and behaviors, I really think I just go back to my childhood because this is where this all starts. Um, in terms of like comfort eating, kind of talking to my mom and things, it would be we just give you chocolate, put you in the corner, and you were happy. And that kind of soothing with food started from a young age. So I would have been quite an overweight child and quite an overweight teenager. And I just remember those comments being made and kind of looking back, it definitely was weight stigma, where then you start to internalize that stuff. So again, thinking about the way I viewed the world, if you remember 80s, 90s, that culture exploded. It entered everybody's households. You had grannies, aunties, mom, everybody on diets. And I just got that real sense of your worth is attached to your weight. And, good foods, bad foods, all of the stuff that we now know isn't actually helpful or true, but also that weight equals your worth. And it's not really through anybody's fault because at the end of the day, that was marketing and that was industry and that's what exploded at that time. So I remember being around that puberty age, for a lot of young people, you go out before you go up. And that's certainly what happened to me. And I really just had that kind of fear around food and eating and just kind of developed a really disordered relationship to eating at that time. And I just remember being a teenager and going to school and not really, like eating an apple all day. But that started the kind of restrict binge type cycle where you would eat nothing and then you would really overeat. You kind of didn't really know what was driving it. You thought something was wrong with you. You were defective in some way. I actually did lose a lot of weight at that time. Obviously, you get loads of praise and you were like, oh, great, this is wonderful. But really, it absolutely was not. It's really interesting because like I was thinking back to things that I did, all the diets, all the every bandwagon you were on it and then you were off it. So like one time I remember getting Slim Fast on, this came up the other day, I was thinking about it, on offer in Tesco's, and then like drinking one of the shakes and it being gross, not drinking the other one, playing netball after school, and then passing out at the bus stop and telling nobody what was going on because there's so much like shame and guilt around all of that. And I kind of did it to myself. So this kind of led me on this journey of going to university, went and studied neuroscience, was my degree, and I really thought I was being really healthy, chronically undereating and over exercising. This is health, this is health, this is wellness. And then I had that panic of what do I do with my life? And I went on to do a degree or a master's in dietetics, thinking, let's get the holy grail here. Let's get the answers. Let's find it all out. I was always helping people with losing weight. I was always helping, this was what I went into. But whenever I graduated, I ended up moving to London and working in weight management. And I would say it perpetuated everything I already thought around disordered eating. I worked in an industry that like was low carb diet, and it just reinforced all the things that I thought. And then it's really interesting. So the big transformation really came for me having kids. There's nothing like that boom. What am I feeling? What's going on for me? Wait, hold on, this doesn't feel right anymore. And I moved into working in eating disorders. So I'd always worked in kind of weight management. 15 years ago, when I started out, it was very weight centered, and it was you hit weight targets. But now it's very health centered and behavior focused. So that whole journey for me working with clients has been a real transformation as well, and my own transformation. I moved into working in eating disorders and really understood then what I had went through, and actually the restriction led to the binging, and the emotions led to the binging, and actually it's all of that stuff that needs healed. And also the part around diet culture, that we just don't trust ourselves anymore. We don't trust our bodies. We don't trust anything about us. We don't trust food. There's so much information out there. We don't know what's right. We don't know what's wrong. And for me, then now I just want to help clients with that, because I have a level of empathy that's not all health professionals haven't been through a lot of it. But also that idea of bringing the trust back to you, that there are no good or bad foods, there are no absolutes in terms of nutrition. There's you in your life, and you trust in your body and trust in what your body needs. I always joke that my food philosophy can be summed up in one sentence, and it's get in what your body needs and a bit of what you fancy. Like, there you go. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. Let's just simplify it. For me, I really give myself permission to eat whatever I want. And I think everybody, regardless of your body size, you should be able to do that. But a big piece of the work is the curiosity of what's coming up for you, what's going on, what's driving. It's the why underneath the eating. It's the why that's, really, really important. So when I look back at my journey, I think I was always really anxious. And I think I channeled that into food and eating and weight as a way to cope with that anxiety. And fundamentally, the mindset stuff is I'm not good enough. And the I'm not good enough really drove, the low self-esteem, the low self-worth drove like trying to be a perfectionist as well. So again, that really helps me with my clients, because I really get what they're going through. And you think like, I'll be perfect because I control my anxiety, and I'll eat perfectly, and I'll have a perfect body, and and you're like, it actually just makes the anxiety worse. And for me, the mindset stuff too, a lot of that has been more recent. So the growth versus the fixed mindset. So I didn't realize I had such a fixed mindset. I properly was afraid of failure. Like, I mean, wouldn't have done anything where I thought I wasn't good at it. And I think looking back, it's so sad, because it stifles creativity, and it stifles like your kind of existence in the world. But also the mindset traps for me around all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, getting into catastrophizing, the should eat this, should do that, should exercise. And those thoughts still come up. The thoughts still come up, but the thing is, you react differently to them, or you change the way you react to them. So I just look at that through that compassionate lens now for myself, which has been a massive transformation, because I didn't even realize I had an inner critic. And I remember the moment I realized it. I was 22, I was at uni, and I was reading this book written by a bodybuilder. And he was actually quite forward thinking. It was called Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle. And it was like, one of those ebooks. And I was like trying to learn everything about nutrition. This was before I did my dietetics. And there was a chapter on your inner critic. And I read it, and I stepped back and I went, oh my goodness, I have been speaking so horribly to myself forever. And it was like this moment of realizing, like, I just completely used to tear myself apart in front of the mirror, like all the time. Not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And you kind of realize, oh, actually, I might need to work on this and change this. Um, and it's one of the things with people I work with that I really talk about a lot. Like, you cannot beat yourself with a big stick of shame and guilt to allow change to happen. We have to look at compassion and kindness and connection to ourselves and being curious, and all of that together will help us challenge what we're doing and change what we're doing. Um, and the neuroscience bit for me is recognizing actually how difficult change is for the brain, and you don't like it, and your body doesn't like it, and you have to give yourself time, like 9 months, a year, to change habits, to change behaviors, to change mindset. It's a day in, day out. It's a daily job, and there's no end to this transformation. This is ongoing. And I do notice in periods of stress, like I've been quite stressed recently, um, the wee anxiety voice, perks up, and it's like, here, what's that new intermittent fasting? No, that's not for me. That's not a coping mechanism I use anymore. Here, what about that? What about that? And the wee voice chirps up, but you're able to kind of silence it and go, that was that coping mechanism served me back then. It doesn't serve me now, and I'm not going to go back to that. And the same with working with clients, a lot of it is about de-shaming and them, because they develop coping mechanisms that can be quite shameful, like things like binging, or like I work with people with anorexia and bulimia, where maybe they're vomiting, and it's so secretive, and it's like you develop that to cope and to survive, and actually your brain is quite smart developing that, but that no longer serves you now. So we've to look at other more effective coping mechanisms and let go of the ones that are really harmful. um Again, I always come back to, like, there's a behavior, there's a feeling, and there's a need underneath it, and what is the need, and what is the why, and what is driving us. And that big thing about diet culture is we look outside for answers, and we're looking for validation, and we're looking for all of the things, and we need to come back to ourselves, and we need to come back to, like, we know we have the power, we have the kind of, we have to start trusting ourselves again. And I mean, a big part for me as well was emotional awareness. Like, I think I just lived my life as like this head that just like overthought, and just disconnected from all the emotions. And like, I've turned 40, and I feel like something is like cracked open in me this past year, to be like, the emotions are coming, they're coming out, let them out. It's really hard and really uncomfortable, actually. I literally went for acupuncture yesterday, and like something cracked open in me, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I'm like, that's okay to let out how you're feeling, and it's okay to sit in the discomfort of how you're feeling. But I have a 4-year-old, so the name it to tame it, which I'm doing with him, I'm doing it for myself. Name the feeling to tame the feeling, and all that emotional awareness. So, like, for me, it's about, how do you break the cycle for your kids? Like, my daughter is just never going to hear me talk about weight or body image or tear myself apart or any of that. And I think we owe it to the next generation to change the conversation and change how we talk about food, how we talk about eating, how we talk about our bodies, and how we talk about health. Ultimately, health for everybody looks different, and we need to work, I think, on removing weight stigma, and thinking about, even campaigns in schools weighing kids. If something might do harm, let's not do it. Let's stop doing it. And I would work with young people with eating disorders, and these things cause harm. they're getting weighed in a physics class to learn about gravity. It's not necessary, and it's triggering eating disorders in amongst lots of other things. Um, but I do get on my soapbox quite regularly about these things. So yeah, I suppose that is my transformation really, a lifetime one with the eating, with the relationship with food and with healing that. And also that we are more than our bodies and what size we were and what clothes we were. And it's really interesting. Like I was having this conversation with my mom the other day, and it's like weddings are coming up and we want to look good and all. And she was talking about some man of 14 to 16, if she just loses weight. And I said, Mummy, do you know what it is? We buy clothes to fit us. We don't need to fit into clothes. It's just a known thing. Like, let's stop. And God love her. She was like, oh yeah, that's true. That is true. But we've been brought up to think, if I just slim myself down, if I just squeeze in, if I just make myself smaller. And let's face it, that's part of the problem, because as women, we're afraid to take up space and we're being told not to take up space. So it's all connected, but I'm really about helping people with their habits, their behaviors, their mindset, transforming that relationship with food and eating, and changing the conversation for the next generation. The other thing, because one of your questions is about what's for the future, one of the things for me is mindfulness and being present in the moment. And I really struggle with it, but I am working hard on it day by day to be present with my kids, because I think we're all so busy. We're running around like headless chickens. And, I just want to be present with them, because, they're 4 and 6 at the minute and they're not going to be that age forever. And being present and finding joy in playing and having fun, that's really important to me. Travel's really important to me, spend time with friends as well. And on a bigger level, in terms of like a mission, like I am quite passionate that in Northern Ireland we don't have obesity services. And I think it is like such a stigma, like it's such a weight stigma. Why in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England are we having support with things like the GLP-1 agonists and bariatric surgery, and a whole pathway of support and multidisciplinary team and medical input and dietitians and physios and OTs? Why are we getting that everywhere else and we're not getting it in Northern Ireland? And we keep having this same conversation every single year. And we had a consultation on it, to like wrote a big thing for. You go to meetings and there's no money, and it's like it's connected to everything, people's well-being. It's connected to all of it, plus cancer and diabetes and everything. So I just think we need to end weight stigma and we need to have services here, and I personally think it's completely non-negotiable. So that's the hope for the future anyway, as well. And also working with more people and helping more people. So I currently offer one-to-ones and groups, and I would just love to keep doing that and help anybody that's struggling, that's feeling alone, that's feeling ashamed, that just wants help and wants to break the cycle. So that's
Very
probably
good. Thank you very much. Um, So I love you were talking about we should. Tony Robbins has a wee thing that he makes people laugh. I'll not do it justice, but you're shooting all over yourself, and you should stop shooting all over yourself.
Do you know where
Um,
that comes up a lot for me as well with exercise? And I still have it, and it's a hangover for all of that stuff. Like, you should go to the gym, you should. And then I'm like, no, what do I want to do? What would feel good? A walk would feel good. This idea of doing movement you enjoy, that's been another big change for me, because I would have just been like, beasting it, killing myself, hit workouts, just the hardest things. And then you realize that adds stress to your system, especially when you're already stressed. So like on Monday, like I went up the Cave Hill. I was like, I need to get to the top of a mountain and just sit,
very
So
good.
it's, yeah.
Yeah. No, and when you were at the top of Cave Hill, did you have a wee scream? maybe as well.
I'm going to be really honest. I actually had a cry. Like I'm having a really emotional week, and I was like, bring it on. And like, I'm just letting it out. And I just
Yeah.
sat there, and then I just watched like the birds flying. And that was because I walked up, listening to podcasts, listening to audiobook, on the go. And then I was like, take it out and sit in nature. Like actually like be present, watch the birds fly and just sit there. You've nowhere to be. And then on the way down, I did the same. I kind of like looked at the trees, looked around me. We go out in these walks and we're just like, oh, steps, oh, but like, where's the joy and the fun and the getting back to nature? And it's so powerful for your mental health.
It really is. It really is. And you were talking about the anorexia and the bulimia, and you were saying about the coping mechanisms, but also for a lot of people, it's about control. Because for some, particularly for very young children, it's the only thing they have control over. If they refuse to eat and they get a whole pile of attention because they're refusing to eat, that's a level of control. When we're maybe a teenager and we're being told we have to study this and we have to do that and we have to write this and we have to go
Yeah,
to whatever organizations we have to go to and stuff, then it becomes a bit about control. And for many, then it becomes an unfortunate cycle that whatever's going on in their life, that's the one thing they can control, and they can control it, unfortunately, to a very detrimental extent. Unfortunately,
absolutely. Absolutely. Control is a big one. And even just of feeling in control,
yeah,
it's so subconscious. It's like I said, those difficult emotions coming up. And it's like the thing I need to look at's over there, but I'll just avoid that and go over here because I can control that.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's complex, but you've also, as we well know, got trauma in there too, and that,
absolutely.
whether it's big T or small T, it has profound effects. And for some people, like the eating disorder like offers this solution that's less, difficult than over here at that looking at that trauma. But ultimately, they are deadly. Eating disorders are deadly, and it's anorexia has the highest mortality rate. So that's what worries me about like young people kind of like the not I seen this stat and it was like the biggest reason that people fall into eating disorders is dieting. And it's something like extreme dieting, you're 18 times more likely. It's just some research that was done to develop an eating disorder. So when I go to talk to like young people, like I just put that stat up because I'm like, don't do extreme diets. Like it's too risky. We don't know in this cohort who's going to be more predisposed to potentially develop an eating disorder just from like going on, like a really extreme diet. And obviously there's all the other factors in there too. It's not just dieting, but it's something that we don't really talk about the dangers of
Yeah,
dieting.
absolutely,
We're given like, oh,
absolutely.
magic answer to everything, but like there's a lot of really harmful effects, especially of
Yeah,
extreme dieting.
particularly when they're teenagers and things that younger. I was putting my first diet when I was 12. Um, what
Yeah.
what are you doing to the child's hormones and bones and organs and so on and so forth? Now, my mother thought she was doing the best she could for
Of
me,
course.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
But still, it ended up with a lifelong issue for me. But
Yeah.
kind of horrified as well at the weighing people in physics class to learn about gravity. What in the name of all that's holy? Surely there's plenty of equipment in those places that they could weigh. And surely, I think in my day, you'd have dropped a book and dropped a heavier book to see which fell faster. Well, it wasn't bricks, it was
Yeah.
a feather and a ball, or, that was kind of weighing children in class. That's just
Yeah. So you've got
horrific.
the national, I can't remember what it's called, is it the child measurement program? And they do weigh them at certain time points. And like I really grappled with this because they were doing it in P1 and I didn't know whether you know, to let my child be weighed. And I really battled. And my husband was like, you're kind of overthinking it. For me, it's what are they doing with the information or why are they collecting the information? If it's just data points in time, that's that's fine. But if you're sending a letter home to a parent to say your child is obese and you've no help or support for that parent,
You're dealing with it.
what are you doing
Absolutely.
it for other than
Absolutely.
shaming the parent, you know? So it goes back to me as to like, what do we have available here? Like, if do we have programs to help people? Like, I worked in London for 5 years, and I worked across the lifespan. So I worked with like moms that have had babies, like toddlers. They were like prevention kind of initiatives, and like it was just getting toddlers used to different foods and things. And then I worked in the obesity services for, you know, teenagers, and then adults. So they were more the treatment side of things, and I worked with psychologists and personal trainers, like physical activity specialists, and it was an MDT. But we were going in with children living with obesity with their families and providing a very, you know, holistic, whole family approach, a whole system approach, because the parents are buying the food and the kids are, you know, living their life, and we have to bring this together. And it's about health, and it's not just about putting a child on a scale, you know. You're not trying to get kids to lose loads of weight. You're maybe just trying to get them to level out and maintain as they kind of eat and look at their food and look at their eating. But it's really bad that we're kind of like saying to parents, oh, there's an issue, and then we've no way of supporting
No,
them.
no, no help at all. And the best of it is those set points were originally for people being underweight and not thriving and not meeting their and missing out on a whole pile of nutrients. They were missing their milestones and missing out on nutrients and stuff that would help them develop because they weren't having a rainbow plate and a good variety of, a lot of people going back to my mother's kind of generation and age group, that generation that were coming out of the war. My mother and father were teenagers, young teenagers during the war. A lot of people lived on bread and dripping. And it
Yeah,
was about making sure these kids, it was trying to do a program around helping these children to meet their milestones, height and weight wise,
yeah,
to make, because that was an indicator of they were getting enough nutrients.
yeah,
And now it's totally turned around to these children are obese. And the difficulty for me in that is that having worked in various areas of deprivation,
hmm,
you maybe have two parents that are shift workers, and they're just about there. They're not, like you're saying about being present with your children. They're just about present in the house because they're coming in to go to sleep while the kids are downstairs or whatever. There maybe is only a microwave.
yeah.
And that's not to say you can't cook healthy meals with a microwave, but what are the chances?
Yeah, I think that's the piece of the conversation that's missing, and like really annoys me about these like podcasts and things that are quite elitist in the advice that they're giving. Because when you're on the ground in deprived areas, we know accessibility, availability, money, um, you know, issues within mental health, medical issues, all of this contributes. And we have to think about health inequalities here, you know,
Yep.
and the idea of just like, you know, eat less, move more, or just buy more vegetables. Like, there's severe barriers in the way for people to actually make these changes and be
Yep.
supported in a way that they can afford, that is sustainable. And like you very much well have pointed out, their cooking facilities or what they have available to them, and how many kids are feeding. And we have to
Fighting.
think
Yep.
all of this too, and what's available, like what shops are around the corner. Like, I used to deliver like in Lewisham and places like that. I mean, there was a million chicken shops, you know, and there was no like local supermarket. I can't remember some of the facilities I delivered in, but like you could get chicken and chips for £1, and the babies and
Yeah, yeah,
puppies were eating them, and that fed
yeah.
their child. So the other thing is the cultural backgrounds. I would have worked with very different, you know, like we would have went into a mosque and things like that, and you're looking at the different dietary backgrounds and the different cultures too, because you can't just do one size fits all,
No.
especially there's so many different ethnicities as well. So it's a complex picture. And that's why, when people come out and just say statements, or, these influencers that are like, this one diet worked for me and this is like the ultimate. And I always think, if anybody's talking about nutrition in absolutes, red flag central.
They don't know what they're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
always a nuanced conversation, and it's always, you know, the person in their life is the expert in their life on what's going on with them and what their challenges are. And like you say, if you're a shift worker, if you're sleep deprived, if you are up all night with a baby, you're starving, you're craving carbs and sugar, what is happening for them?
I was just going to say, if I said to you, you're not allowed a coffee or with sugar in it at this moment in time, I wouldn't make it out the door like.
I know.
Be,
Well,
I'm sorry, what? You're taking my coffee off me?
well,
No.
I laugh because I was on this overcoming eating difficulties course. I just finished it. It's like for guided self-help, for like bulimia and binge eating. And there's a psychologist and dietitian running it, and they were brilliant. And they were like, right, guys. So at the end of the first session, they were like, so think of a behavior like that you want to change. So I had thought, oh, maybe coffee or something. And then they were like, right, so tomorrow you're going to stop that behavior. And I was like, oh, and then I wrote into the chat, eek. And they were like, they were really getting us to feel how clients feel, if you're just like, and all of us were like, maybe we'll start it tomorrow. Maybe we'll start, and that
Yeah.
idea that, behavior change again is complex, and there's lots of elements to it. And that's the other bit. I've studied cognitive behavioral therapy for eating disorders, and it's really helped me with those bits of connecting the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for people, of like what's driving things, because there is always a why underneath. Like I said, there's always a why driving that behavior. And the first bit is stepping back to observe it and go, oh, curiosity, like what could be going on here? Like what might be happening? And I'm doing a wee bariatric group at the minute. I think we're on week 6 of it. And it's really interesting because we're all like, what are the answers? Let's jump in, let's start doing. And it's actually, we need to step back and we need to slow down and we need to like ask questions first of all. So if you can say, like, I know if I'm stressed, I'm like, reward, I want reward. I'm like, where am I finding that reward? And I worked with Denise Ratcliffe. She's a brilliant psychologist that works in bariatric surgery. And she was always like, foods, you can't take food off the table. Like literally, when you're looking at coping mechanisms, it still has to be an option. And like the person has to feel empowered to have other options in the toolkit. But food still has to be one of them. Because otherwise, if we're like, you can never have that, you're in the dieting, all or nothing, good or bad, doing that's bad, shame and guilt. We have to still give ourselves permission to have the food, to, say, this is intentional, this is a choice I'm making. But then I do think the compassionate piece has to really come in. I was just on a call around hunger fullness, and it was like, when you think about compassionate, it's not really compassionate to like eat and be really stuffed and feel physically unwell. That's not being very kind and compassionate to yourself. But it's also not kind and compassionate to be down at the other end where you're ravenous and starving and running around and neglecting yourself and not eating. So it's that idea of like, I suppose fundamentally you have to think, well, I'm worth it. I'm worth taking care of. I'm worth, nourishing myself. I'm worth looking after myself. And as we say, like the mindset is all tied into that too. Um,
Yeah.
because if you don't feel worth it, I mean, I think that's the biggest mindset shift for me is I am good enough. I am good enough. And I literally say it every day because I'm like, that's where the wee crack in the armor can come in to be like,
Yeah.
oh, mess that up. You're not good enough. Look at you. You've screwed it. Oh, messing up again. Excuse me. I am good enough. I do deserve this, and it's reprogramming your brain and knowing, like if I'm 40 and I've had 40 years of this, I am going to need to say this every day for like a good 10 years, to like lay down those new pathways. That's the
Yeah.
other bit about the neuroscience, because you can really help people understand the way your brain works. And again, it's not your fault. This is what your brain's doing to keep you safe. And this is how we're going to move forward. But you need to know it's going to be hard. Certainly, and with anorexia, this idea that you're going to get this meal plan and you're going to go away and do it. No, you're terrified. You are terrified to eat. Every single eating occasion is terrifying. And like when I say to people, like you're not stuck, you're scared. Like you're really afraid. And when you understand the amygdala is just like taken over. So obviously your front of your brain is just going offline, and it's like, I am not, I can't think. I just need to avoid eating. But when you help people understand that, again, that's really empowering to go, I can.
Absolutely.
I'm afraid right now this will pass, I will be okay. But ultimately you still have to challenge and change and do something different. But it's not beating up yourself up about the times where you're not able to do that. I think that's
Yeah.
the bit. And I think that's where the coaching bit really comes in,
Yeah.
because you can draw the
I agree.
positive. People come on and they're like, it's been awful, I've done nothing. And I'm like, right, hold on a minute. Did I see you're doing this? Yeah, well, I did do that. Well, there you go. So I'm like, you need a round of applause for that, because our brain just looks at the negatives and we negate
Yeah.
all the positives. Um,
Unless you retrain it. Unless you retrain it. Unless you do some of the stuff we've done to retrain it. And the thing for me, the lack of services as well. Like you, I think it's fairly horrific. I ended up in hospital, um, not November there, the November before, and I'm
right.
still waiting to see a nutritionist because they put you on the SAD diet, the standard American or standard Australian, whichever diet, all the beige stuff, the chicken and white bread and all the stuff that for me I was going, no, that's not no, no, I can't. And I'm going, I need to book apart from that, I'm like 80% vegan now. So and you want me to eat chicken? No, this does not sit. So I was really, really, really conflicted. And I remember being on the phone with the GP at one stage, and I was saying about uh, weight services. I don't know what the technical term is, but weight services. And she says, yeah, yeah, because you want bariatric surgery. And I was like, no, I want to talk to somebody about my lifelong issues with food and where this has come from. And I've done hypnotherapy for PTSD, and I've done hypnotherapy for sugar and I've done EFT for chocolate. But there's still, my body will not let go of the weight. And she's like, oh. So even as a GP, she was going straight to, you'll have surgery? Surgery is not going to change how I internally feel about me and about food and why I go to food for comfort and so on and so forth. And it's like, wow. So even, our GPs don't even get this stuff yet.
I know. Well, I feel sorry for the GPs because they've nowhere to send anybody.
No,
The,
no, absolutely.
the other thing is, so I kind of worked in the weight management camp and then worked in the eating disorders camp, and I just think there's a massive disconnect. And like the one thing I really I'm so passionate about is connecting both things up. So I would have been like I'm very non-weight focused. I don't weigh anybody. Obviously, if somebody's coming from anorexia and they need to gain weight, again, they would still weigh themselves, because I think it's quite empowering. It's like the CBT approach. If someone wants to share their weight, grand. So I kind of went like the other way, like like the intuitive eating and the non-weight approach. But the reality is people want to lose weight, and I think some people want to lose weight should be supported in that. But for me, like it's really not it shouldn't be the focus, because I think the behaviors and the mindset, if that's the focus, the weight will, kind of come down.
Okay,
But
yeah,
we do have a body weight set point that our body now wants to be at, and
yeah,
your body will fight to get back to,
yeah,
and I think I lived a very weight suppressed life for a long time, and I battled and battled for years, and like you were killing yourself over like half a stone, like come on. But you're really sold, I suppose, in my 20s and thinking like the dream of like, oh, you get down this weight. The reality is your body is like the way it is. The genetics are kind of there, the weight set points there. It can be changed, but it's really bariatric surgery is probably the main thing to change it, for especially when you get up to the higher weights. But I think weight can come down and be maintained, but it needs to be like a slower process and you need to have breaks in it. Whereas this, like, it's always urgency, like, oh, I need to lose it by like 3 weeks away. It's always like a panic situation. Come on, right? And stripping everything out, and then it's totally unsustainable. So it's a
Yeah.
bit like
Yeah.
playing a long game with it
Yes.
and being like, right, okay, next year, where do you want to be? Right. So what am I going to do in the next 6 months, the next 3 months, next month? And just thinking about the long game with it.
For me, I think changing the focus from weight to health. What
I
am I gaining? How am I not? Let's not look at. And I don't do CBT. I do NLP, neuro linguistic programming.
yes,
So for me, it's not about. Let's not look at what I want to lose. What do I want to gain? I want to
I
gain
think,
the ease of movement or the feeling of just being joyful in my own body, comfortable in my own skin. Those. Let's look at what we want to gain
and
and not what
I
we need to lose.
I totally agree with that because I think when you're like lose weight, all your mind wants to do is find it again.
Yeah,
Whereas,
absolutely.
if you're just looking at the health gains, so the big thing I love working with people is non-scale victories. So with the bariatric surgery, I'm always like, tell me about your non-scale victories. I think I literally put a post up about it the other day. And it's like the person that, gets the kidney transplant that they needed and don't need dialysis every day. One woman was like hadn't ridden a horse in 20 years or something, back to horse riding. Another guy was a football manager, but he couldn't kind of make it to the field anymore. But like within a week of surgery, like he was back at the side of the pitch managing. You know, it's the one lady's going diving. She's always wanted to do diving and she's going on a diving holiday. So it's literally like the quality of life and
Yeah,
those things there
yeah,
where it's at. The other thing I always say to people is there's a difference between like motivations and feeling motivated. Like your motivations are the things like the big end goals, like what do I want to achieve, what do I want to get to? Maybe it is the holiday, it's trekking up, climbing up a mountain, whatever it is. Feeling motivated is like going to go like that, and it's not you're going to have days not motivated. That's human nature, but it's tapping into what are my motivations then to keep me
yeah.
going. Um,
And your motivations, we call them the big whys. What is your big why? And
yeah,
when you know your big whys, they help you when your motivation flags to increase your discipline.
yeah,
And that's where your discipline then kicks in, because motivation doesn't last.
no, it definitely doesn't. And I suppose discipline, I kind of call that like showing up for yourself. So
Yep.
like every day, how are you going to show up for yourself?
Yep.
So you need to actively be doing that because it's the consistency and the persistency that will cause the change. And
Yep.
if you're just like showing up for yourself once a week, like that's not gonna, we're not gonna get your brain reprogrammed. And yeah, look, it's hard and life gets in the way and we have to navigate it, but that's all part of it. And I think it's setting people up that that's realistic. I'm like, nobody comes to me and it's like a straight line. Like nobody, like we all know it's up, down, up, down, up, down, but it's the ability to get back up again and keep going.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So yeah, no, it really is. It's fascinating. All of it. I could talk to you for hours, I think.
I know, absolutely, particularly because we have different, similar CBT, NLP, we've similar and very much you're a mindset coach, whereas I'm an emotional well-being coach. But a lot of the emotional well-being coach, every client I have, the feeling behind whatever they come to me with is, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve. Bottom line, that's what they all have, and that's what we're working on and trying to. And again, for me, it's all about the amygdala, trying to keep you safe, and that's the stuff we're trying to teach them. So we're in the same book, just maybe not using exactly the same language, but it's all around the same thing. So yes, I could talk to you for hours as well. Um, Gillian, thank you very much. The last three questions that we finish off with are your favorite book, your favorite phrase, or what you would tell your younger self. You don't have to answer all three. I ask all three because when people say to me, "What's your favorite book?" I would go, that is probably what I'm reading right now. So I kind of it's so you can answer all three or one of the three or two of the three, whatever suits you.
So the book I have is a little daily mantras book. You probably can't see that actually, but my sister bought me that a
You see,
few
if you
years
put it right in front of you, if you put it
ago.
right in front of you, that there you go.
Can you see it? Yeah.
That's it.
So
Lisa
it's
Messenger. Brilliant.
yeah, it's really good. I just have it by my bed. It's literally got a date every day, something written. Read it in the morning or read it at night time, and I find it really good for refocusing me, and then I would kind of build that in with a bit of like gratitude or journaling. So I just love that. I am listening to Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now at the minute. It's a classic, but I feel like I've needed to come back to that in terms of being present and being mindful. And I'm just kind of listening to that going to bed. So that's quite good. But I have this habit of listening to like five audiobooks at once and then not finishing it, any of them. So I'm going to try and see that one through. Um, the thing about my younger self, it would definitely be you are good enough and to trust your gut, because that would be
Yeah.
what I'd say, 100%. And what was the other one? Because I maybe had an answer to that, or maybe not.
Your favorite book, your favorite phrase,
Well,
and
I
what you
was
would tell
going.
yourself.
I love this one out of this book. I was going to read out. It's you can rise up from anything. You can completely recreate yourself. Nothing is permanent. You're not stuck. You have choices. You can think new thoughts. You can learn something new. You can create new habits. All that matters is that you decide today and you never look back. And that's Idle Ahmed. I just love that one because it kind of sums up everything we've been saying around thoughts, mindset, habits, and basically, I have the power to create new habits.
Brilliant. Very, very good. Thank you very much. Gillian, thank you for your time. I appreciate it and I appreciate the work that you're doing in the world to help people that have struggled and are struggling their whole lives. Um,
You're very welcome. And if you want to follow me or anything, I'm on Instagram as Dietitian Gillian and Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, um, Facebook and LinkedIn. So
well,
yeah,
that's what I was going to say. We'll get your details and we'll put them. Usually, when I put it on, it's below. But sometimes when you see people in their Facebook, it's ended up above or whatever. But we will, we will on YouTube and Spotify. Your links will be below for anybody that wants to get in touch. Thank you
perfect.
so much indeed, and I
Thanks,
see
man.
you in all the other places that we usually meet in Facebook and Facebook World and all that side of things.
Yes, I will
Thank you
indeed.
very much, Gillian.